Today we're making Hokkien Mee, a Singapore seafood noodle dish braised in a gorgeous broth. This is a very unique fried noodle dish. Think of it as seafood risotto but with noodles. I have to have Hokkien Mee with a spicy sambal sauce, so I'll be showing you the recipe here as well. So let's go! First, let's make the prawn broth, which is the single most important ingredient for good Hokkien Mee. I have here some prawn heads. You want the prawn heads and shells, but I've been collecting these for a while, so I can just use the heads. Here I'm just removing those pesky long fillers and antennas. We'll also be adding some garlic to our broth. Smash your garlic with a knife just like this. Just kind of flatten it. You don't have to chop it up. We just want big chunks like this still. We'll also be adding an onion. Simply cut the onion into half. You don't even have to peel the skin. Easy. These are dried anchovies or Ikan Bilis. This is going to give the broth even more of that briny seafood taste. Just give them a quick rinse underwater and they're good to go. Okay, let's make some actual seafood broth. To a pot, add some oil. Once hot, add in the prawn heads and shells. You want to be careful here. Saute the prawn heads until it's all nice and orange and the liquid has all been drawn out and evaporated. Now do not skip this stir frying process, okay? Otherwise you'll end up with a very fishy broth and we don't want that. Your kitchen should also smell really good like grilled prawns. Once you have that, and this is totally optional, but I'm adding some chicken feet and random chicken parts. Now Hokkien Mee broth also has a sort of fattiness to it that it gets from pork, but since we don't use pork, the chicken parts will kind of replicate that and add an extra layer of meatiness to the broth. Not too much chicken though, because we still want a mostly prawn-y flavor in our broth. With the chicken, we just want to sear the skin of the chicken, so just for a while and just until the skin is not pink anymore. Once that happens, add in the Ikan Bilis or dried anchovies, as well as the onion and the garlic. And finally, water to get our broth happening. Give all of that a quick stir, and you can use your spatula as well here to sort of squish out some of that prawn brain juice into the broth, and then turn up the heat and let this come to a boil. Once it comes to a boil and you might get a lot of foam coming to the surface, you can skim this if you want, but I actually don't mind it at all. Lower the heat and let this simmer for about 30 minutes to an hour. You can cover your pot with a lid as well. And when you come back, your seafood broth is all done. Now, I do not season my seafood broth at all. I just don't find it necessary. The prawns add such a nice sweetness, and any salt I'd rather much add when I'm actually making the noodles. Plus, if there's excess broth, I can keep this for future recipes. Your seafood broth should also have a nice orange tinge to it. Now we are going to cook the seafood, specifically the prawns and squid. For the squid, I just removed the head and don't forget the bone inside and give it a good wash inside out. And then just drop it into the seafood broth. You don't have to cut it at this point. While you're there, we are also boiling the prawns in the broth as well. This will take super quick, just a couple of minutes. You do not want to overcook the seafood or else your squid will get all rubbery and your prawns mushy. Just 2 to 3 minutes in the boiling broth will do. Once your seafood is done, take it out and keep it to one side. You can now slice the squid into rings too. Strain your broth once you've cooked all your seafood, or just scoop everything out like I always do. And then you want to keep this broth to one side right next to your cooking pan, and we're ready to make our Hokkien Mee. I'm making a portion for 2 here. You want a wok or a big pan just like this. Add plenty of oil and we are first cooking the egg, which is not usual when making fried noodles. Let the egg scramble and almost cook. Next, toss in our noodles. I have here some fresh yellow noodles, as well as some thick bihun or thick vermicelli. You can also just use thin vermicelli noodles as well. Hokkien Mee is always a mixture of two different noodles, so there's always a yellow noodle and a white noodle. And to that, we add 1 ladle of the seafood broth. Now give all of that a stir fry. We want the noodles to soak up all of the broth, and we want the broth to almost disappear. When you have something like this, push the noodles to one side and add some more oil. And now don't be scared to add oil, okay? This is not health food, but it really gives the noodles that gloss and the extra fatty taste. To that, we are adding some chopped garlic. And we are seasoning this with fish sauce as well as white pepper. You can use light soy sauce as well or just salt, but fish sauce really goes well with all of the seafood flavors. Give that a saute, and we are adding another ladle of seafood broth. Same thing here, we want to stir fry all of this until the broth almost disappears. Now what happens here is that the noodles are absorbing all of that delicious prawny broth. You don't do this all at one go, otherwise you just end up with soggy noodles. At this stage, it would already start to get creamy, so we're almost done. Add in some garlic chives and bean sprouts. And give that a quick stir fry. And of course, our cooked seafood. So these are our gorgeous prawns. Slices of the squid. And these are sliced fish cakes. You can also use fish balls. And finally, add 2 ladles of seafood broth. Now this is the final stage, so add as much broth as you want sauce. Kinda doesn't matter when exactly you add the seafood broth. To make it easier, just add the broth before or after each cooking step. You'll notice the broth becoming this thick sauce. That's the starch from the noodles signs. To me, this is perfect, and we are actually done with our Hokkien Mee. You can be done here, but not for me. I cannot have Hokkien Mee without a side of sambal belacan. You can use your favorite sambal, but I'm making my own easy concoction. This is dried chili paste. I have my own homemade version here, linked somewhere if you want to make your own. Or you can also just buy a dried chili paste. It's also known as chili kisar or chili bo, or you can also just use sambal olik. We'll also need some dried shrimps. Add some warm water to it and let it soak to just soften. Now this part is optional, but I'm chopping this up into chunky pieces because I like biting into the chewy shrimps when I have my sambal. But this is totally, completely optional, okay? If you don't want to do this, then just add this straight to the blender with the rest of the ingredients. To a blender, add the dried chili paste, onion, some garlic, and most importantly, belacan or terasi or dried shrimp paste. And if you're not chopping up the dried shrimps, then you can add your dried shrimps here as well. Then give all of that a blend so you get your sambal paste just like this. Now let's cook this so it's actually edible. To a pan, add lots of oil, like lots, don't be shy. And then over low heat, add in the blended sambal chili paste. Continuously stir fry that, and we are going to let this cook. This is known as oil splitting. This is when the paste has dried slightly and has sort of thickened. The oil will also have turned red and is sort of floating above the sambal. So something like this. Once we're here, the sambal is cooked, so it's time to season. Add in the salt, but not too much because belacan and dried shrimps have some salt already. Sugar. This is tamarind paste. And finally, the chopped dried shrimps. Give all of that a good stir, and you can give it a taste test, see how you like it, and your sambal is done. And that's our Hokkien Mee, a super delicious, super umami, unique fried noodles full of gorgeous seafood flavors. Serve it with a squeeze of lime, and of course, you cannot forget the sambal. I hope you give this a go, and bye! For more Asian noodle recipes, I have so many, so go check out any of these other yummy noodles now.